Imagine being handed a set of documents that could shatter the story you believed about the person you love most. No warning, no preparation, just pages of alleged DNA results that claim to rewrite a chapter of the past. That is the storm now swirling around Prince Harry after explosive claims surfaced from his half-sister-in-law, Samantha Markle. And if the allegations are true, or even partially true, the implications could be monumental. According to Samantha, this is no longer about family disputes or tabloid drama. She claims genetic testing has uncovered biological links tied to 1997, a year that critics have long described as a mysterious gap in Meghan Markle's personal timeline. For years, speculation lived quietly in online forums and rumor mills. Now, Samantha insists that science has entered the conversation, transforming whispers into what she calls measurable proof. DNA, she argues, does not bend to narrative or branding. It either matches or it doesn't. Reports suggest Harry was blindsided when shown the alleged documentation. No polished briefing, no carefully managed statement, just data placed in front of him. Sources describe disbelief. First, a heavy silence followed by visible emotion. If the claims are false, the damage to trust and reputation is still profound. If they carry any truth, the emotional and public fallout could be far greater. The controversy deepens because 1997 has long been referenced as a missing piece. Questions resurfaced when certain records connected to Meghan were reportedly sealed in late 2018, months after the royal wedding. Critics have pointed to timing. Supporters have dismissed it as a coincidence. Now, Samantha frames the issue not as speculation, but as biology, shifting the debate from opinion to alleged evidence. At its core, this is no longer just a public relations battle, it's about trust. What did Harry know? When did he know it? And was the full story shared before life-altering decisions were made under the global spotlight? Meghan's public narrative has consistently emphasized resilience, independence, and transparency. Harry has fiercely defended that narrative, distancing himself from critics, including Samantha, in the process. The real weight of this moment lies in uncertainty. If DNA truly proves something significant, it could redefine public perception. If it doesn't, it may still leave scars in private and public life alike. Either way, the conversation has shifted. This is no longer framed as rumor or rivalry. It is being presented, at least by Samantha, as a scientific revelation. And when a story moves from accusation to alleged evidence, the world doesn't just listen. It watches closely, waiting to see what truth, if any, emerges from the storm. For years, Samantha Markle has argued that the public version of Meghan Markle's past was not entirely fabricated, but carefully edited. Not false, she suggests, just incomplete. Certain chapters were shortened, others are left unexplained. And at the center of her long-standing concern is one year that refuses to fade from the conversation: 1997. Online researchers have repeatedly described 1997 as a gap, a period allegedly linked to birth records under the name Rachel Meghan Markle in California. On its own, that discovery might have remained obscure, but it didn't. Reports later surfaced claiming that documents connected to that name were sealed in December 2018, 7 months after Meghan married Prince Harry and formally entered royal life. The timing immediately drew attention. Why, critics asked, would decades-old records suddenly become inaccessible only after she became a global public figure? Supporters argue that records are sealed for many legitimate legal reasons: privacy protections, clerical corrections, or standard administrative measures. Public figures frequently take steps to guard personal information, but critics see the sequence differently. They question whether the seal was routine or reactive, preventative or protective. And that distinction is where speculation intensifies. Now, Samantha has placed that same year at the center of her most explosive claim yet. According to her, the alleged DNA results don't simply suggest a distant family link. She ties them directly back to 1997. In her framing, biology and paperwork converge at the same moment in time. Before, skeptics were working with timelines and database screenshots. Now, she suggests scientific data is reinforcing the paper trail. Whether proven or not, that claim fundamentally shifts the tone of the debate. If a birth record exists and genetic testing connects Meghan to events from that year, the significance of the seal becomes far more consequential. If no such connection exists, the damage from the allegation alone is still profound. Either way, the conversation moves beyond rumor and into the realm of claimed evidence, and that changes everything. For Harry, the emotional weight is deeply personal. Marriage into the British royal family carries historic, constitutional, and public responsibility. If major life decisions were made based on a particular understanding of the past, and that understanding now appears challenged, the issue becomes less about scandal and more about trust. Those close to the situation describe him as grappling not only with the allegation itself, but with what it could mean for the foundation of his marriage. Because if he spent years defending Meghan against family criticism, standing firm against Samantha's warnings, what happens if science appears to validate the very concerns he once dismissed? As attention circles back yet again to 1997 and the December 2018 sealing of records, the divide between narrative and alleged evidence grows sharper. The unsettling possibility isn't just that something was said, but that something may have been left unsaid. When sealed documents and fading memories collide with claims of laboratory confirmation, silence can become louder than accusation. And so the spotlight remains fixed on that single year, not because it is dramatic on its own, but because every new claim, every resurfaced document, every whispered reference to DNA leads straight back to it. The seal, critics argue, may not have closed the story. It may have preserved it. So how did one quiet year become the origin of whispers that refuse to disappear? As scrutiny tightens around documents and alleged laboratory claims, the focus shifts from paperwork to biology, and to a figure that has long remained silent: Trevor Engelson, the former husband of Meghan Markle. For years, he avoided interviews and declined to publicly criticize her. That silence once seemed protective, but in certain online circles, a rumor began circulating that he had allegedly made a private comment suggesting Meghan underwent a hysterectomy during their marriage. The claim has never been publicly confirmed. It remains an allegation repeated in limited forums, yet its implications are serious enough that it refuses to disappear. A hysterectomy is not a minor procedure. It eliminates the possibility of carrying a pregnancy naturally. If such a surgery had occurred, critics argue, it would conflict with later narratives surrounding pregnancy. If it never happened, others ask why the rumor has not been decisively dismantled through direct clarification or legal response, particularly given the couple's history of forcefully challenging media claims in the past. The issue becomes less about gossip and more about plausibility. Either the allegation is false and unfounded, or there are details the public does not understand. Now place that alongside Samantha Markle's latest assertion: alleged DNA results tied to a child connected to 1997. If genetic evidence were to confirm prior childbirth, it would establish that Meghan was physically capable of having children at some point. That alone would not resolve the medical rumor, but it would complicate the timeline critics attempt to construct. The tension lies in the overlap. On one side, there is an allegation of a procedure that would prevent pregnancy. On the other hand, a claim of DNA evidence indicates childbirth in an earlier period. Both cannot coexist without explanation. One would have to be inaccurate, or key facts remain undisclosed. For Prince Harry, this is not theoretical. Marriage into the British royal family carries historic and constitutional weight, especially regarding lineage. Transparency intersects not just with personal trust, but with tradition and public responsibility. Any unresolved medical question becomes amplified under that lens. The core issue is not whether rumors are true or false, but whether Harry was fully informed. If there had been a prior pregnancy, did he know? If there had been a medical procedure, was it disclosed? These are deeply private matters, yet once DNA claims and sealed records enter the public sphere, privacy and scrutiny collide. As attention circles back yet again to 1997 and the sealed records from December 2018, another shift becomes clear. Samantha herself has changed tactics. Once dismissed as the bitter half-sister, her earlier interviews framed as emotional outbursts, she now adopts a more measured tone. The volume has lowered, the precision has increased. Instead of broad accusations, she references documentation, timelines, and alleged genetic evidence. She drops information in fragments, breadcrumbs, that invite investigation rather than demand belief. The strategy subtly moves her from antagonist to self-described witness. What further fuels speculation is the legal silence surrounding these DNA-related insinuations. Meghan has previously shown a willingness to pursue defamation cases when she believes her reputation has been harmed. Yet there has been no sweeping lawsuit specifically targeting Samantha's most recent biological claims. Legal analysts often point to the concept of discovery. In a defamation suit, both sides must present evidence. If claims involve DNA or sealed records, litigation could compel disclosure of medical documents, communications, or genetic testing to establish the truth. Critics argue that filing suit might open doors that have remained closed. Meanwhile, Harry's silence has become part of the narrative. In past controversies, he was vocal, issuing statements and confronting media portrayals head-on. Now, as the focus shifts to alleged biological contradictions, there has been no detailed public rebuttal. Silence can signal legal caution, strategic restraint, or exhaustion. But in high-profile situations, silence invites interpretation. Supporters see dignity. Critics see avoidance. What makes this moment different is that the allegations are no longer framed purely as personal grievances. They are framed as biological questions. Samantha appears content to let them linger. She does not need to prove everything publicly, only to suggest that proof exists. And as weeks pass without decisive counteraction, tension builds not just around what she claims to know, but around what Harry may be wrestling with privately. Because when silence stretches too long, it stops protecting a narrative and starts reshaping it. And the question now echoes louder than ever is this: how long can silence shield a story if science, paperwork, and unanswered timelines continue to converge? Prince Harry felt the ache in ways no public statement could ever translate. Behind headlines and speculation, what he was confronting wasn't political, wasn't strategic, it was deeply personal. Every word he had spoken in defense of Meghan Markle, every decision to step away from royal life, every bridge he had burned to protect their future now seemed to hover under a cloud of doubt. Not just doubt about the outside world, but about whether the full truth had always been within reach. Meghan had been his anchor, his certainty in chaos. Their bond had survived media storms, institutional pressure, and family fracture. But even love cannot silence unanswered questions. If there were chapters left unexplained in 1997, sealed records, or alleged DNA claims held more than rumor, then the emotional cost was not measured in headlines. It was measured in trust. Samantha Markle's shadow lingered over that fragile space. Once dismissed as a distant critic, she now positioned herself as someone calmly pointing toward documents, timelines, and biology. The volume of accusation had lowered, but the precision had sharpened. And that shift changed everything. Because it's easier to ignore anger than it is to ignore alleged evidence. For Harry, the struggle wasn't simply about who was right or wrong. It was about the unbearable tension between defending the woman he loves and confronting the possibility that parts of the story were incomplete. He found himself replaying old conversations, re-examining moments he once accepted without hesitation. Trust, once instinctive, now requires reflection. In private, the silence between them grew heavier, not hostile, but charged. The kind of quiet filled with thoughts neither wanted to voice. Meghan, composed before cameras yet vulnerable behind closed doors, could see the strain. Sleepless nights, long pauses, the subtle shift that happens when certainty begins to thin. She reassured him that their truth mattered more than public narrative. But reassurance does not erase curiosity, and it does not dissolve biological claims if they prove verifiable. DNA, if real and relevant, does not respond to emotion. It does not bend for loyalty. And that is what makes this moment so delicate. If Samantha's insinuations were baseless, silence might eventually suffocate them. But if documentation and laboratory claims align, silence becomes a fragile and temporary shield against a reckoning that cannot be postponed forever. Isolation carries its own sting. Harry had already distanced himself from royal structures, from familiar bonds, to build a new life on his own terms. Now he faced the possibility that protection and confrontation might collide. Choose to remain silent could preserve stability or deepen suspicion. Choosing to speak could clarify or ignite a storm no one could contain. And yet, through the uncertainty, one truth remained. His instinct to protect Meghan and their family did not waver. Love demands courage, especially when certainty fades. Every shared glance, every private reassurance became a quiet declaration that loyalty and truth did not have to be enemies, even if the world framed them that way. But the question pressing harder with each passing week is unavoidable. If alleged DNA evidence confirms what has long been whispered, can silence survive? Can a fortress built on shared conviction withstand biological verification? Or does authenticity, something Harry has publicly championed, now demand confrontation rather than restraint? Because when evidence, emotion, and history intersect, the real battle is not fought in tabloids. It is fought in private rooms, between two people deciding whether the story they built together can endure the weight of what might still emerge. For Prince Harry, every whispered reassurance from Meghan Markle now had to coexist with a private reckoning unfolding in his own mind. How does someone preserve stability in a marriage shadowed by questions that, if true, only DNA could answer? Can love remain enough when the foundation of family history feels uncertain? These are not questions a press release can silence, or a carefully curated image can shield against. The tension between public narrative and private truth has never felt sharper. Supporters see a couple standing firm against relentless scrutiny. Critics see unanswered timelines and biological claims that demand clarity. At the center of it all is the uncomfortable power of alleged evidence. Gossip can be dismissed, opinion can be debated, but when accusations are framed as scientific or documentary proof, the emotional stakes change entirely. Meghan, steady in public yet vigilant in private, would undoubtedly recognize the strain on Harry's composure. The path forward, if such claims persist, is no longer just about defense. It becomes about integrity. Samantha Markle's persistence has sharpened the divide between private loyalty and public accountability. Every sealed record mentioned, every carefully measured silence, fuels interpretation. The more restraint is shown, the more observers project meaning onto it. Harry's internal struggle mirrors a broader human truth. To question, to doubt, to revisit what we once accepted without hesitation is deeply personal. Trust is instinctive when love feels secure, but when confronted with claims of biological finality, even the strongest convictions can feel tested. Still, it is important to separate allegation from verified fact. Assertions about DNA or hidden chapters remain claims unless independently proven. Without confirmed evidence, they remain part of a narrative battle, not an established reality. Silence, too, can mean many things. It can be strategic. It can be a legal caution. It can be exhaustion. Or it can simply be a choice to protect private matters from public spectacle. In high-profile lives, however, silence rarely stays neutral. It becomes interpreted as either a shield or a signal. If undeniable proof were ever presented, it would demand confrontation. If no such proof emerges, the episode may instead reveal how quickly speculation can harden into assumed truth. Either way, the true test for Harry and Meghan would not be devotion alone. It would be transparency balanced against privacy, loyalty weighed against public accountability. So the larger question lingers. When rumors grow louder and evidence is claimed but not confirmed, is silence protection or pressure building beneath the surface? And if the full truth, whatever it may be, were known from the beginning, would anything about this story feel different today?